Welcome back to Giggles and Gains. I have got a special guest with me today, and this is Claudia.
Hello.
She has been practicing as a psychotherapist for 12 years, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Where am I looking?
You can look at whatever camera you want.
Okay.
That's your camera.
Yeah.
And then David clips them all in together.
Okay. So my name's Claudia. I'm a qualified psychodynamic psychotherapist, and I also practice EMDR, and I work full-time privately. I have in the past worked for the NHS. I worked for CAMS, where I was trauma pathway lead and gender identity pathway lead.
What's EMDS?
EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is a specific trauma therapy type of therapy.
Is that like similar to hypnotherapy or different?
Yes and no. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. I'm just going to say EMDR from now on because it's quite a mouthful. It's supposed to replicate, I'm doing lots of thumbs now. It's supposed to replicate eye movement during sleep, like REM sleep, to help the brain to process trauma.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then you'd then work with people to understand how their body language effectively links into their trauma, or?
Not quite. So I'm trained psychodynamically first and foremost. So I think that's probably kind of my bag more than EMDR, even though I am a qualified EMDR therapist. It's all right. It's
already.
Okay. No, it's okay. So psychodynamic therapy is looking at how the past impacts on the present. So it's looking at your unconscious processes. So things that you're not necessarily aware of. So clients might come to me with a presenting issue. So say, for example, they might say, I'm really struggling in my relationships, or I feel really down all the time, but I don't know why. So my job would be to help them to understand their unconscious processes. So why are they getting into similar relationships? Why are their patterns of relating really similar?
What trauma did they have when they were younger
Possibly.
that then stems into...
Absolutely. So could it be something to do with their relationship with their parents that then manifests in their romantic relationships, for example?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So before we get absolutely lost, we are actually going to be recording 2 episodes today. We're going to be doing, because a Q&A, we had so many questions come through that I was just like, we had an agenda of the things we wanted to discuss. And then we had all of these questions come through. So we're going to do a Q&A episode, which is going to be our first episode. And then we're going to do another episode, which is going to be more about boundaries and knowing when enough is enough and being happy with that. So, which is basically something I just wanted more info on. But I'm just going to be using my phone because there were so many questions come through. Normally I type them out on my laptop and I was like, oh my God, I haven't got time to write these all out. So I'm literally going to start off with the questions and we'll just work our way through them. So the first question, which you were like, oh, interesting, was the ADHD management and tips for people who suffer with ADHD.
Okay, so that's a really interesting one because I think it's really important to understand whether it is ADHD or whether it's a trauma response. So I think it's really important to know whether you have got ADHD traits or are those ADHD traits mimicking some kind of trauma response.
Okay, interesting.
You might probably come at it from the same angle. So things like pacing yourself would be really good. Have you heard of the spoon theory?
No, tell me.
Okay, so spoon theory is thinking about how many spoons you might start with in a day. So for some people, you might say, let's start with 20 spoons and then think about how many spoons a particular activity might take you. So getting from the bedroom and having a shower, for some people, that might not take them any spoons, but for other people, it might take them, say, 5 spoons. And then, they've only left with 15 spoons in a day. So what are they going to use those 15 energy spoons, if you like, to do for the rest of the day? So if they were going to the gym, for example, how many spoons might that take? So as a tip, it's like pacing yourself and really thinking about what you're doing throughout that day to consume energy. And what is it worth you consuming your energy on? Does that make sense?
And you're saying that because like somebody who potentially has like ADHD or ADHD traits, uses a lot of energy to kind of go through their thought processes and kind of gets a little bit lost in a way.
Could get lost.
Yeah.
Or could overinvest, or might not pay attention to how they're feeling internally.
The bigger picture that's going on,
and then
because
end up
they've been
being burnout.
consumed.
Yeah. And also thinking about sensory overload. So for some people being, I'm saying gym because obviously you're a PT, but I'm thinking about being in a gym environment. For some people, they need their headphones on, they need their cap on to kind of block out a lot of stimulus and the noise. And it's just really paying attention to how much that might be impacting on your energy levels and your spoons, really. But for some other people with ADHD, they need to burn it off. So how much attention are you paying to how frequently you're moving?
Yeah. 100%.
And if you're sat still and your job is quite sedentary, where are you burning that energy off? Is it burning it off in thinking, or is it burning it off by going for a walk? Or are you kind of energised at the end of the day because you haven't had that opportunity to burn off?
And this again stems back to like stuff that I try and help clients with, which is like, but as much as somebody who suffers with ADHD or has those traits, we want to encourage them to try and build some sort of routine, even though they do find that challenging, because it's then breaking their day up when they're kind of having these overconsumptive thoughts and that overconsumptive energy into like, well, if you get up, you do this, you have your breakfast, you have a go for a walk, and then you're effectively, that's helping you then distribute your spoons.
100%.
Oh, I love it. Top tip. There we go. Broken down into my brain and how I understood it. Okay. How do I start therapy? I know I need it, but I'm not sure how to start.
That is a really, really
I'll tag you on Instagram.
good question. And I've had a lot of people ask me this, and I think that, you know, it can be terrifying looking for a therapist because there's so many people out there. I mean, I don't have a massive list of tips, but, you know, go on to the different websites. So there's a counselling directory, there's the BACP, there's UKCP. Go and have a look and go and meet a few therapists. So I know that might cost a bit of money to go out there and meet a few different types of therapists, but I think you'll get a good feel for who you want to work with.
I could probably answer that question more from receiving therapy as a point of view. And my first experience of therapy was somebody who I actually sold home insurance for, and he was a man, but he was a very straight talking, down the line, direct chap, and he told me what I did, and I'm nosy, I'm curious, and I asked him more about it. And then when I realised I needed my first bout of therapy, I contacted him, and we had quite a long relationship for a couple of years. And then the second instance of therapy was actually a therapist I was PTing recommended a string of different therapists. So a tip could be like, speak to your friends, ask your friends if they'd have therapy, ask them who they used, what their experience was of their therapist, what their therapist was like. And my second experience of therapy was effectively, the lady recommended 3 people to me and said that I would be suited to one of them. And then I had a relationship with that person, and they were really fast paced. They went at my level. They understood me really well. We had a good relationship. Again, it was direct, concise. They called me out my bullshit. That's really important to me. And that worked well for me. So speak to your friends, find out who your friends are using, if they're using therapists and what they like.
And also think about specialisms as well, because you might find somebody that's an ADHD specialist or a gender specialist. It doesn't mean that you have to bracket them, because some people might come thinking they've got ADHD traits, and then we think about something else that pops up. I think I put a post on my Instagram today about, you know, baggage spilling out. What you might think is the presenting issue, actually there might be something else unconsciously there. But I think it's good to have an idea of what's this person's specialism, what are their qualifications, what's their experience.
What's your specialism?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. As a psychodynamic therapist, I'm looking at past impacting on present. So it probably lends itself more to trauma-based stuff. But I also specialise in working with at the LGBTQ community as well. So
Is that because that's something that you're passionate about, or is that just something that you've kind of like drifted into?
Well, a bit of both. I am really passionate about it. I think you've got to be passionate about what you do.
What you do, yeah.
100%. And I'm lucky in that I am really passionate about all my clients that I work with, whatever presenting issue they come with. I think I need to make that really clear. So just because somebody might be from the LGBTQ community doesn't mean that I'm going to be more passionate about that than somebody that comes that's a cis white person. Is it something I've drifted into? I think one of my first private clients was a trans woman, and it was such an interesting learning experience for me. And I really grew as a therapist working with this person. And I suppose because I've got that experience, I then kind of built on it.
Yeah, but that was always that first person that holds that special place in your heart as well, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. This is probably a little bit close to my heart as well, and something I'm battling with at the minute. How to change the way I use alcohol from stress resolving to something I can enjoy and control. So I'm not that down that road, but I do use alcohol as a relaxation.
Yeah.
Not to binge drinking degree, just a couple of glasses.
Okay, so look, this is not something I can give a concrete answer to because, like I've said, I'm probably going to say this 100 times. As a psychodynamic therapist, I'm looking at the unconscious processes. So it's more about, what does the alcohol represent? What does it mean to you? What is that stress relief for? What's going on that means that you feel like you need to have some stress relief rather than it being about the alcohol itself?
The person who's asked this question in particular finishes a night shift at the pub.
Okay.
And he is obviously like, you're working at a bar, it's highly like functioning, there's a lot going on. And he goes from having like, I'm just going to have one or two before I go to bed to then sinking quite a lot of alcohol. And we're working through that with him at the minute 'cause he's a client, and it's like looking at the things that you can then do to, rather than actually replacing the habit with something that's more beneficial. So effectively still having a drink when you get in, but replacing it to a different type of drink. And that's what I spoke to him about.
So you're talking about more the here and now stuff, aren't you?
Yeah.
Whereas I would be thinking about the here and now.
Oh God, so I was sorry about that.
Talking about the here and now, but also thinking about, the causation. So what is it that's the underlying stress?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it being so overly stimulated within the pub? And are there ways in which that could be managed slightly differently so that you don't end up feeling like I just want to get completely wasted?
Yeah, 100%. Interesting. My pets are unruly.
That's okay.
How can I tune into my body more and notice when my moods are changing? For example, period mood swings.
Okay. Tracking it is a really good one. So just being aware of, when you first wake up in the morning, just what sensations have I got in my body before I even wake up. I think a really good way of tuning in with your body is doing some mindfulness. You don't even have to do it for like 5 to 10 minutes. It could be 30 seconds of let's just have a think and let me just notice any physical sensations in my body. And really paying attention to that, because I think with your period and mood swings, I think you can feel really out of control. So what can you control within that? And not acting upon some of those feelings, because I think we can all feel quite rageful at times when we're due on our period.
Yeah, absolutely. But I speak a lot about our cycle and the hormones and how they impact us. And I've said this time and time again, your period can be influenced by your nutrition, your exercise, your stress and your sleep.
Absolutely.
So
stress is a big one.
If we're focusing on improving those 4 pillars, we will actually, can you come over here please, honey? You will actually improve your overall menstrual cycle. And I can vouch for that. Like in periods of my life when I'm highly stressed and I'm highly anxious, my hormonal symptoms are really severe.
Yeah.
But then in periods of my life when I'm actually in a good space, my nutrition's on point, I'm not drinking as much as normal, the stress is low, sleeping good, I'm meant to be coming on today. I don't even know I'm coming on because I've been in a really good place the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
Yeah.
So mindfulness for cycles and tracking
Just
them.
really tracking them and tracking your mood as well. So you've got more of an idea, because I think if you start to tune in every day with your body, first thing in the morning, 30 seconds, it gives you more of an opportunity to really figure out when there is something that's off.
I encourage a lot of my guys at the end of the day, they have like a daily journal type thing that they fill out. It's on the phone, but using that, you could then effectively use that at the beginning of the day rather than at the end of the day for a review of the previous day, a review of the morning. How am I feeling today? And then you could check in with that and maybe making a note of it, getting a notepad and start journaling it and writing it down.
Definitely.
Okay, love this one. Tips for effective communication with your cohabiter when it's stressful.
Sometimes I think it's important to take the pressure off it being face-to-face direct communication if it's started to get stressful.
Okay.
So are there other ways of communicating that could just give you a bit of distance? So I'm not advocating you do this all the time, but sending a message, sending an email. I know that sounds really formal, but sometimes I think it can just take the pressure off.
Oh my goodness. Like, so Derek and I we can have some quite fiery arguments, and one of the things that I've started to try and do, because we sometimes struggle to hear each other, and what I've started to do is actually write down how I feel.
Yeah, you don't even need to say.
I write it down and then I have to sit on it, because sometimes I can, if I'm due on or I'm not feeling rational, I'm feeling sensitive, and I'm like, did I really need to say that? But then sometimes I will send it. But then he's actually started sometimes doing that back to me.
So
and it's really nice if we have time to think and reflect it together, and then we can come together eventually 48 hours later after we've all simmered and then discuss it. Yeah.
Great.
Any other tips?
So there's that. How about in the car as well? When you don't have to make eye contact, go for a walk.
Go for a walk is
so
our favourite as well.
Yeah. So once again, just try and take the pressure off, and where you can walk away. So maybe not the car, but where you can walk away. Don't do that. Claudia's not advocating jumping out the driving seat or the passenger seat
at any time.
No. So somewhere where there doesn't have to be direct eye contact, just to take that pressure off, because otherwise sometimes it can feel a little bit intimidating and or too formal.
Yeah.
And if you're already stressed or know it might get heightened, just try and alleviate some of that before it starts.
Nice. Okay, so we've got have a better work-life balance and switch off from work. But I probably want to save this one. Do you agree? And we'll talk about it in our second episode.
Yep.
And then we've got another boundaries one, which is how to set boundaries with situations, people that are difficult. So we'll save that later. You have to remind me to come back to these.
Yeah.
How to manage friends who aren't on a similar journey and don't understand this new life. I mean, I need to pick up this one separately.
I guess it depends on what you mean by managing them, because do you have to manage your friends?
I think it comes down to a case where communication is key, and explaining to your friends that actually, I know this particular person is on a new fat loss journey. She's lost 17 kilograms in the space of 17 weeks.
Wow.
And she's growing in confidence, and she's becoming a different person, a better person, a healthier person, a happier person. And sometimes along the way, and I've had it a lot with clients, where their partners or their friends either grow with them or they go on different paths. Yeah. But actually having a really open, honest communication with your friends and saying, hey, this is the path I'm going on. This is the reasons that it's important to me. Yeah. I'd love you to come for a walk with me on a Saturday morning, because I'd rather do that than go drinking on a Saturday night. Would you like to come? And if they come, you know they're on board on your journey. If they don't come, then they can go out drinking on Saturday night and you can stay in and chill out if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Would you say anything differently?
I wouldn't say anything differently. Well, I would. I think, yeah, I would actually.
I changed my mind.
Yeah. I think there's something about, who does come along with you and who's going to invest in you as a person. And I think if you're investing in yourself as a person and someone else can't,
Absolutely. I literally had this conversation with somebody, a client of mine this week who is autistic, and he just went out on his second ever date. Oh my God, it was such a vibe. When he told me he got a date, I was over the moon. And the girl didn't go ahead and didn't want to pursue anything with him. And I just said to him, you don't want to be investing your energy in somebody who doesn't want to invest energy in you. Yeah. You want to wait for that person who's like on your vibe. Absolutely. And wants to come back. And I guess it's the same with friendships and relationships. Definitely. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another boundaries one. Oh, you're gonna love this one. How to stop your past impacting your future?
Well,
have therapy.
Yeah, that was going to be my first one. And I think it's about understand, because I don't think it's as simple as what do I do to stop my past. I think it's great, actually, that this person has recognised their past is impacting on their present. So some of it is clearly conscious. And I think the more awareness you have got of what's influencing you in your present from your past, the less likely you are to keep replicating that. But I do think therapy, especially psychodynamic therapy, is really helpful with understanding your unconscious processes and your patterns from the past that are going to be impacting in the here and now.
I'm here for this.
Yeah.
So getting a better understanding of your past and then how it impacts your future.
Sure. So having that understanding is great, and clearly this person does know that, but I think it's the unconscious patterns from the past that perhaps they've got a little bit stuck with.
She's starting to break them down. She's starting to grow into herself and find herself again. And she's had a really abusive relationship, and she started to work on her confidence, and then met her new partner. And he's lovely. He's absolutely delightful. And then she started working with me because she realised she was putting on some weight. She lost some confidence. And now when she's working with me, she's had a real battle in the last week where she got a lot of compliments for her weight loss journey, and she didn't know how to process them because she's still stuck in the trauma loop that has happened from the previous relationship, and it's been really overwhelming for her this week. So she knows it's there, but then I guess it's now needing a little bit of help to break that down.
Definitely.
And it gets rough before it gets better sometimes.
And I think sometimes it just needs it needs some therapy to help put some of that into perspective and process it, whether that's the EMDR I was talking about earlier, the eye movement and desensitization and reprocessing, whereas if it's a specific kind of trauma experience that you might need to process, or whether it's working with a therapist that understands the unconscious past.
Is there an ability for somebody to actually start to work on that themselves?
Well, it sounds like she. I'm assuming it's a she.
Yeah,
it sounds like she already is.
Because
so of course I'm advocating for therapy.
Absolutely, but of course, but actually, like the fact that somebody is being able to like acknowledge their past and what's happened in their past, and then be able to say, "This is happening because of this." It's that process. She's starting to unpick that, isn't she? She's starting to process that. So time maybe as well. And
also those new experiences. So having those compliments and allowing that to go in and that be okay, and recognising, oh, this feels really alien to me, but can it be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And thinking about what she deserves too, that she deserves those compliments.
Yeah, the next ones are all going to link in from the same person. Okay. So let's go through those. How to change your mindset from always being negative first.
Again, I have to think about this because I'm not a CBT therapist, and CBT therapists think about thoughts, feelings and behaviours, and how your thoughts, if you change your thoughts, it can change your behaviours. Which, I can get on board with that to a certain extent, but I think there's also unconscious processes and your feelings that impact on your mindset as well.
Absolutely. I've had this conversation, I guess, with Derek. Like, we spoke about it a lot, and it was like how I personally believed that he had events in his life that had shaped him the way he is. Yeah. And I have quite a strong opinion that I've said this before, like, I sometimes believe that people choose to be offended. And then he's then corrected me and said, like, oh, actually, like, sometimes it can be like stuff that's happened in your past that actually alters the way that you think and feel.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to give a little bit of a tip on negative mindset that's kind of worked, I guess, well for me and some clients, is if you're thinking negative things, try and then counteract them with like 2 positive things afterwards. So you're starting to reaffirm and think about more of the positives. Okay, last one, last of our questions, and then we'll cover the others in our next episode. Advice on self-sabotage. I know your answer.
Well, what's my answer going to be?
Your answer is going to be, it depends where the self-sabotage is coming from. Is it coming from previous experiences? And then starting to understand that and work through it.
Absolutely. But once again, all credit to this person that's noticed that they're self-sabotaging, because that they're already halfway there if they've noticed a pattern. Whereas some people come to therapy and they're like, this thing is happening to me, and they don't even realise that they're self-sabotaging. So they're already on their journey to not doing it by recognising it.
The first thing is that they start to work through, because that's a massive thing, isn't it?
Well,
Especially in what I do. It's huge.
I'm thinking about, obviously I don't know this person, but I'm thinking about how much do they think they deserve good things.
It goes back to that compliments though, doesn't it?
It goes back to that. And also, you know, is there a fear that things are going to get taken away from them? So if they sabotage it, do they take it away for themselves and then they're in control of it, rather than this fear of someone else taking it away? So if they sabotage it for themselves, they get to ruin it and stay in control.
Yeah, 100%. So it's taking control of the situation because the situation has previously been controlled by somebody else.
Possibly.
Yeah. Interesting. So we have finished with our Q&A episode. We've got a couple of boundary related questions that we're actually going to save for our next episode. So if you want to know more about boundaries, which is what we're going to be discussing in the next episode, and we're also going to be discussing is it enough, and finding that happy place with accepting that it is enough. But thank you so much for Claudia for joining me today.
Thank you.
So you can follow Claudia on Instagram at
Claudia Kempinska Psychotherapy.
and I've just ummed. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. You can save and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Have an awesome evening.